What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. So this video might seem a little bit awkward because it started off as sort of a how-to video, and then I realized about halfway through it that I actually have no idea what I'm doing, because this is only the second European mount I've ever made. But yeah, it kind of turned into, by the end of it, more of a vlog style video of how I went from a fully caped out whitetail buck to this. So, sit back and relax, enjoy the video. If you do, make sure to click the thumbs up button, subscribe here if you're new, and yeah, check it out. Alright, what's going on, everybody? It is Tuesday, November 7th, and it is 60 degrees, and the wind is wrong. So, I figured today, instead of going out and trying to fill my doe tag, I'd make a little headway. Shitbag. Yellow jacket. Anyway, that's going to be a freaking problem. So I figured today, instead of trying to go out and fill a doe tag, I'd try and make a little headway on making a European mount for the buck I killed last week. I knew I wasn't going to be able to get to him right away, so I triple bagged him, had him in the chest freezer for the last couple of days, and now I'm just kind of letting him thaw out so we can work on him. Another freaking yellow jacket. Now, there's a few things I wanted to cover before I get into starting to make this European mount. The very beginning of this process is going to be a little bit graphic, so I'm going to throw a shortcut in the description if you just want to skip past all the fleshing and peeling the hide off the head, and you can get down to just where it's clean bone. I'm not sure how YouTube's going to react to this, but I'm not a monetized channel anyway yet, so that's another freaking yellow jacket. This is going to be a real problem. Real problem. I'm probably not going to be able to do this here because of the yellow jackets. So I'm going to most likely wind up relocating here. So let me do that, and I'll bring you back. Okay, so now that we're out of the way of the yellow jackets, let's go ahead and get this guy unwrapped and let him thaw out a little bit. Like I said, he's been in the freezer for a couple days, and his hide is going back in. I've got plans for that. But in his current state, he's just caped out. I know the wind's going to be a problem. Wondrous. Okay. So yeah, he's still frozen pretty solid. But there we have. Let me angle this a little bit so you can actually see what's going on here. Here we have my buck, fully caped. So what I'm going to do is kind of wait for him to soften up a little bit and just cut the cape off at the base of his head, and we can get started from there. Okay, so now he's been thawing for a couple hours here, and I think now at this point the skin is a little easier to be manipulated. I should be able to actually get a blade in there and be able to manipulate, basically to get the flesh and the skin away from the skull. So what I'm going to do now, because this is where the video gets a little bit dicey if you're squeamish, I'm going to go ahead and put some shortcuts down in the description so you can skip ahead to the point where all the flesh and skin is off the bone. You're just going to skip to the point where we boil this thing. You don't actually have to watch everything being peeled off of this dude's head. So, for those of you that remain, I'm going to be using this knife. Now this is a really cool knife. It's a Browning knife and they don't make it anymore. But it has a nice, thick and heavy cutting blade to do a lot of work. It's what I do my gutting and skinning with. At least the interior part. But to open the deer and do fine work, I like to use the gut hook portion of it. So, what I'm going to be doing with this guy is just coming in right here at the corner of the mouth. Just get your gut hook in there and open them up all the way back to the back of the head. Now the reason I'm using the gut hook for this is so that the blade itself doesn't get in there and gouge the skull any. If you put your blade up against the bone, you're gonna make marks, you're gonna cut, you're gonna gouge that bone. And you either have to take some sandpaper to it, try to get that out of there, or you wind up with a European mount that has a ton of ugly cuts and lines and scrapes all over it. So, what we're gonna do is keep working this. He's still pretty frozen, so I'm gonna have to do this carefully. Again, don't recommend doing this while he's frozen, but that's another reason why I'm using the gut hook, because while this is a pointy end, chances are I'm not going to get cut by the blade portion back in that loop. So, now that we have that line cut right down along the side of his face, what we can do is try to get up underneath the skin there and start to peel it away from that skull. It's a lot better to do this, a lot easier to do this on a fresh killed deer, but I couldn't get to it right away and now I'm just too impatient to let it thaw. So this is how I'm doing it. So now I'll be able to come into the mouth here. And this is where you're going to need your actual blade. And this thing's locked up with fat and muscle tissue from skinning this guy. So in the parts where you're using the actual blade, you want to either keep the point up away from the bone or to the side. Just being extra cautious that you're not putting marks into that skull. I'm going to bring you guys over here so you can see what I'm doing. Okay, so here we have the slice that we made, and all we're doing is getting right up under the flesh here and just peeling it away from the bone. You can hear here, that's your bone. Right down, that's his nasal bone there. So what I'm trying to do is keep my knife parallel, the blade parallel to that, or away from it. I got a dead tick on my hand. And we're just gonna continue cutting until we get up around his eye. Okay, I'm gonna flip this towards me so I can see what I'm doing. I'm not looking to cut myself today. So once you get about to the middle of his nose, you can just flip him over. Do the same to the other side. It takes some doing to get it started, but once you do, it's a lot easier. I'm just going to cut up through some of that cartilage on the nose. Ooh, that is cold. You can start to peel some of that back, get a little bit more room to work. Flipping back to the other side, get it a little more loosened up. And all I'm doing is just putting a little bit of tension on that hide. cutting along at some of that connective tissue as the skin peels away. You can see here, we're at the beginning of the eye socket. Be very careful because there's a little bone that runs around his eye socket, that little orbital bone there. You don't want to put any nicks or marks in that. And as you go, you want to kind of remove as much of this flesh as possible. Just keeping that knife parallel to the bone so you're not cutting into it. Cut around the eye. It's better to leave a little bit more flesh and fat on that skull than it is to cut into the bone and leave gouges. And I've just realized that that is not in frame for you at all. So we can get around his eyeball here. Okay, so now that we got this side up past his eye, we're gonna flip him around and try to replicate that on this side. And again, it's not ideal working with a frozen skull like this. Just takes a little bit of extra time and care. But the beauty is you don't have to rush. He ain't going anywhere. Kind of helps to get your fingers into his eye hole in the skin. Give you a little bit of extra leverage to get in there and cut that skin. Okay, so now we have the hide behind the ears along the top. I'm going to get started on the bottom jaw here. You don't necessarily have to be as careful here. Not a lot of people display the lower jaw, but I at least want to get those jaw bones out so I can try and get an age on this guy. Flip him around here. Get to work on this side. Just following right down along his teeth. Okay. So now we have his bottom jaw all skinned off. Set that to the side. And now it's out of the way for us to continue working on his top side here. So what we're going to do is start from the bottom. Now we hear, as they say. Now that we're up to this point, what we're going to do is just come up into his eye socket here. Cut away some of this loose skin, just to open it up a little bit more and give us a little bit more room to work. We're going to cut right down across the front, down behind the eye on the opposite side. I'll get rid of that. Flip him over here and begin to work on this upper portion. We still have a lot of neck meat here, and chances are you're going to have that. The only way you can really avoid all this neck meat in here is to cut way up to the base of the skull while you're skinning him out. Tell you what I might do to try and speed this process along a little bit. I'm going to get my gut hook blade back out. And right here through the top, try to cut this in half. The issue I'm running into here is that right here, at the back of the antlers to the back of the skull, is just a whole lot of meat. And all that meat is still currently frozen. Now we're just going to come in where we made that split and try to open them up a little bit from there. I'm not putting on a ton of pressure here with the blade, just sort of scraping it, severing that tissue that's holding the skin to the meat. Come around from the front side, try to free up this ear. You just want to get up to the base of the antler. Pretty much what I'm trying to do here is just zip around up above the ear and remove this whole chunk of skin. Okay. Now we have that ear off. Flip this around, take it to the other side. Okay, there's his other ear off. Now we can come in here and start getting the skin around the base of the antlers. Now all you're doing is just following the curve of the skull up. And you're just going to get your knife right up against the base of that antler. But again, don't put too much pressure on here. There's not much you can do to avoid the point of the knife being towards the antler. But just don't use a whole lot of pressure, and you should be able to get that skin away from the bone without putting any nicks or gouges into the bone itself. While you're cutting with the weight of the knife, you're pulling that skin with your other hand. And you can see it's starting to come away. Just super light pressure with the knife. You're almost doing more work with your offhand than you are with a knife hand. And if there is a little bit of skin and hair up under that pedicle, that's fine. You can get that later. Okay, so somewhere along the line my GoPro decided it didn't want to play anymore and the battery died. But I got most of the hair and skin out from around the base of the antlers. I'm going to get to work on getting rid of some of the extra flesh down here around the jaw, back of the neck, things like that. Once I get some of this musculature out from the back of the neck and the cheeks, you'll be able to take your jawbone and just pretty much peel it right out. Okay, so I've managed to whittle this down quite a bit and get a good bit of that meat out. I even managed to pull an eyeball out before I realized I wasn't filming it. So for this one, I'm going to attempt to do my best and actually film it. So what you want to do is try and get a hold. If you have pliers or something like that, it really helps. You want to get a hold of that membrane that goes around the eyeball and just kind of graze it away from the rest of the skull inside that eye socket. And you're trying not to cut the eyeball, trying not to cut the eye socket. You really just want to get that membrane around the eyeball. And once you get some of that membrane out, or at least get it loose, you can take the blade, go back in behind, and just cut the nerve that's back behind the eye. You can see how that's starting to loosen up. There's a little bit of cartilage here and loose skin around the eyeball. It's going to freak you out because it looks like I just cut into the eye socket there. But that's just cartilage, and that can be trimmed up. And you should be able to get back to that nerve and just cut it free. There we go. Pull that out of there, and your eyeball is free. So this doesn't have to be too terribly clean right now because it's still pre-boil. That'll kind of loosen up everything in there, and the pressure washer will be able to take the rest of that out. For the life of me, I still can't get these jaws to open. So I'm going to kill this tick that's on his nose right now. I really got to get this jaw out of here. I might be able to just pull it. There he goes. Try not to break these nasal bones along here. I don't know if you can see. Try not to break these nasal bones. Obviously his antlers. There we go. All right. Now, jaw is free. Just cut that tissue holding it together there. Bottom jaw is off. And with this, once we get it cleaned up a little bit, we should be able to tell how old, roughly, this deer is. So I'm going to set those off to the side for now. Clear away the rest of this tongue. Now we should be almost ready to boil. There's these two little bones that connect the tongue to the rest of the jaw. Just get up in there, cut them out. Yeah, there. Yeah, it's that side off. I'm just going to cut straight across at this point. Can thin the rest out as I go later. Them little tongue bones are just a real pain. There we go. All right. So now his tongue's out. Set that to the side. And we have our general rough shape for our European mount. So I'm going to clear more of this meat and gunk out of here. And I'll bring you back when it's time to boil. All right, well, both my GoPro batteries are dead at this point. So what I'm gonna do is film my phone real quick. So the audio quality might be a little iffy from here, but I don't know. As soon as my GoPro batteries have some charge to them, I'll get back to it. But as you can see at the base of this guy's antlers, he's got a little bit of debris from rubbing on trees and whatnot. So in order to try to preserve that, what I'm going to do is just take some cling film and wrap them around the base of the antlers here. I want it relatively tight, but not tight enough to knock any of that loose. And also what it's going to do is protect the antlers themselves from essentially being steamed over that hot water. So I'm going to get this side wrapped, get the other side wrapped, and then throw them in the pot. Okay, so the reason you want to wrap these antlers to keep them from getting steamed is because that could discolor your antlers. So we got it filled up to just over the top of the skull. We got our burner on almost high, and that's just temporary. It's not going to stay that high. That's just to get the water heated up to the point where I want it. It's also a good idea to add some dish soap into your water here while you're boiling. And A, that'll cover the smell, which is very nice. But B, it'll also help to get some of that fat and membrane to dislodge itself from the skull. And that'll make cleaning it off a lot easier. Now, the terminology boiling the deer skull is a little bit misleading because you don't actually want the water to be boiling. You want it to instead be around 160 degrees. So I have my meat thermometer here and I'll be checking it periodically as the time goes on. And we're going to leave this boil for probably about 2 hours and check it from there. And here I have a couple examples. You can see here the nasal bones are still completely together. And it just looks like a lot cleaner of a European mount. That was boiled with lower temperature water. This guy, water got too hot. And you can see the gaps coming down in the nasal bones. Also, the tip fell off. So that's how you know if your water's getting too hot. You'll see those bones starting to kind of split apart. You don't want that. So keep your water temperature low, even if it means you have to boil it a little bit longer. All right, well, our 2 hour timer is up. Here's a look at how we're doing. Nice stew of water there. Looks like everything's starting to sort of peel apart there. Unfortunately, we are now out of light to go pressure wash this tonight. So what I'm going to do is just turn that heat off and just let it kind of simmer there, cool down on its own. I'm going to go pressure wash it in the morning. See how it looks. All right, well, we are back. It is the next day, and our European mount has been soaking in the pot it boiled in all night. So I think first thing we're going to attempt to do here is get the cartilage out of the nose piece. So what I'm going to do is just take a pair of pliers and just go in here, grab that cartilage with your pliers. And since it doesn't want to pull off, what I'm going to do is just set the skull back down into the water, kick the heat back on, we'll bring it back up and let it go for another hour. See what it does there. Alright, so something to keep in mind here is it's been about 3 hours since I started boiling this today, after 2 hours I boiled it yesterday, is that boiling at low temperature takes a lot longer. So unless you want to make this a day project, if you're fine with it being a weekend project, you can boil it at a low temperature, but I'm sure you can get away with a little bit hotter to make it a little bit quicker. So pretty much what I'm looking for when to know that this skull is done boiling. My main marker here is when the roof of the mouth starts to peel away from the skull. That's when I know it's going to be ready to take it out and pressure wash it. So it's not quite there yet, so we're still going to give it a little bit more time. So what I might do, if it's not done in another hour, is just crank that heat for an hour or so. But for right now, I'm cool just kind of letting it do its thing. Alright, well, it's about 2:30, and I put this on somewhere around 10:30 this morning. So to be quite honest with you, I'm just kind of tired of waiting on it. I turned the heat up about 2 hours ago, and the roof of the mouth still isn't starting to peel yet. So what I'm going to do is just take it out to the pressure washer, knock off what I can, and kind of just go from there. Alright, well, we got the pressure washer set up. We got everything ready to go. I think I'm going to start off with these lower jaws, since they should be theoretically the easiest to get done. I dropped them on the way out the door, so they're already ready to split. But yeah, I'm going to start with that and we'll go from there. Alright, so looking at these teeth, leave it in the comments. What's your guess to how old this deer is? I'm thinking he's right around 2.5. Anyway, leave your guesses down below. I'm gonna get to the rest of this. Can't see anything, can you? Well, so far it's coming along pretty good. Still got some cartilage in around the nasal cavity there. Still gonna have to hit a little bit around the back, but yeah, it's coming along. So I'm gonna try and get this brain out of my eyes. I'm not sure if you were there for that explosion when I stuck the power washer wand down into the brainstem hole, but oh boy, I'm covered in brain. Anyway, I'll catch you up when this is clean. Alright, so for the most part we have this guy fairly well cleaned out. There's a little bit of cartilage still way up inside the nostril and a little bit of membrane down inside the brain hole. So I'm going to take a set of forceps, just a set of fishing pliers, see if I can't fish any of that out. Alright, welcome to Yanni's Woodshop, Bait Shop, and Slaughterhouse. What kind of business will we be conducting today? I'll tell you what it is, it's wood shop. What I'm going to be doing is whipping up a temporary backboard for that European mount. I have it upstairs on my porch drying off now. But what I want to do keep in mind, this is just going to be a temporary backboard. I want to try to find a wood grain that matches, or is at least close to, his antlers. Now I have this entire box of wood log discs. Pretty much like so. Cut down a tree in our house. We cut these log discs and used them as centerpieces for our wedding. Now I have all these log discs and I don't know what to do with them, so I'm making them backboards for European mouse. Anyhow. As soon as I find one that isn't starting to crack, we'll be in business. There we go. I think that one will be good. It's a little bit darker than the rest, so it should match pretty well with the tone of his antlers. So, all I'm going to do, can you see my workbench? No, you can't. Let me fix that. Okay, so all I'm going to do is take this slab of wood here. We're going to sand it down. I'm going to throw a lag bolt in it. So without further ado, set the plane in motion. Okay, now the reason I did the edges was to give it just a little bit of character. Just kind of something to look at. So we're going to choose our prettier side. I think that's going to be this one. And we're going to try and figure out how we want this skull to be oriented. Well, I think just like that would be good. So, now that our orientation's been determined, keep my arrow out of the road. We can come in here and pre-drill a hole. And all I'm using for this is just some lag bolts that were left from our satellite dish. We took the satellite dish off the wall because, well, HughesNet wasn't working out here. We wound up upgrading to Starlink, but that's a different suggestion. So I'm just going to peel the gunk off of this bolt that sealed it to the wall, and we're going to use that as the sort of mounting piece for the skull. So, if you want a little stake for your skulls, make your own European mounts, probably about a 4-inch lag bolt will do it. And the head on this one is about a 1/2 inch. That seems to fit into the base of the skull pretty easily. Okay, we're just going to pre-drill it. I don't even know what size of bit this is, but you know how to pre-drill shit most likely. So we're going to find a spot roughly central. Doesn't have to be perfect. I usually just eyeball these. You don't want dead center of the log either. Actually, I'll go through my entire process. Alright, I've returned. So, in order to figure out how you want this skull to sit, or where to drill, you would take your skull. This is an example skull because mine's upstairs drying. This is my dad's 14 point from the year 2000. Marvel in its glory. He has to one-up me, I know. Anyhow, you would take your skull and place it right about where you'd want it to hang. Bear in mind it's going to be a little bit angled, most likely. So given the angle that I want, you just find the location. So right about there. Set our skull off to the side. Right in here is going to be where I want that bolt. We're going to send it in just straight. Run our lag bolt in. Not all the way. And from there, you should be able to hang your skull. And that's what your mount will look like. And with a 90-degree bolt like that, you're able to stand it out a little bit more, lay it down a little bit, or lay it flat. However you prefer to present your European mount. So, I'm going to let my skull dry. I'm missing a step. So, in order to hang this on the wall, what you're going to need is just a standard picture frame holder. Unfortunately, I'm completely out, so I'm going to go grab the one that this was hanging on and show you as an example. So, this is the backboard that this skull was hanging on. As you can see, the lag bolt's angled at about 45 degrees. This was one of the first backboards I did, so I thought it kind of had to be angled because I was using a standard European mount holder as sort of a template for making my backboards. Then I made a different one where the bolt was 90 degrees, and I found that you could hang them in at a lot more different angles, and it still stayed hung very securely. But this one, bolt just slides up into the base of the skull. Skull hangs, and it looks pretty good. So to hang this backboard onto the wall, all you need is a standard little picture frame holder. And now I'll go show you what it looks like on the wall. All right, so as you can see, we have our nail on the wall here. All we're going to do is take that picture frame holder, slide it right down over, and that'll hold there nice and secure. Now I'm going to go grab my skull. And again, it's not entirely done drying, but there's the skull. Looks really nice and clean. I'm going to try to get out of here quick before it drips all through my living room. We're just going to run it right up onto that bolt. Get our angle correct. And there we have it. That is our finished European mount from my very first buck. And that is certainly one I'm proud to display. So, if you enjoyed today's video, make sure you click the thumbs up button, subscribe if you want to see more, and I'll see you in the next one.